Hey guys, Mark Ferrasci, Protect Dog Training. I wanted to talk a little bit about SIF's layering in the collar, right? We call it layering in the collar. Now, I was watching Michael Ellis. He did some videos on his site recently. He's got a subscription site going on right now with Michael Ellis. He's building it slow but sure, and the content will grow with time. So one of the things he did was a video just recently on the e-collar. And what he basically, his approach was describing different ways that different people in the industry are using the collar. He wasn't instructing specifically what to do with the collar. He was giving an overview of different ways that he has seen in the industry that people are using it. Right? My way of using it is from a couple by the name of Dobbs. Many years ago, back in the 70s, they were working for Tritronics, one of the first e-collar trainer companies that were producing this product called Tritronics. Is now owned by Garmin. Right? And back then we had collars that were from like 1 to 7, 1 to 10. So the levels were so dramatic. Every time you turn it up a level, it was, and by the time you got 7 or 8, it hurt, right? That pain stuff. Now we have collars that have so many more bells and whistles and so much more finesse with the ability to use the collars that it's become a science, and that's why they're such a great tool. We've moved way past that archaic time period that we were just learning about them, where most of us used them as a trash breaker, meaning it was a pain. You do this, it hurts, right? And that's kind of how we used it way back in the day. Right? Nowadays, you have levels that go from 0 to 100. Even there's collars on the market that go to 125. That means that it's so finite, it's so subtle that I can dial this collar in to being very small and minute, and I can do so much more with what we call low stimulation, right? And this is the way that I condition my collars in. I want the dogs to give the power to the dog, and I want to do it in such a way that the dog starts to learn that they have the ability to turn off this stimulation. That's why I call it a stim collar. There's several reasons that I call it a stim collar. You probably will never hear anybody say stim collar but me. Most people call it an e-collar, a electric collar, that kind of thing is synonymous with what we've learned to call it over the time. But I don't call it that for a reason, because most of the public here's e-collars, and they have all this people that are on that negative side of things where they only want to give cookies, and they're only purely positive, and they totally demonize us for using tools that we use aversives. We mix this in. I'm a balance trainer. I use food, I use toys, I use all kinds of motivators, but I also understand all the quadrants of working with a dog, and that's where I learned back in the day was how to use what's called avoidance or escape. And that's basically what you're doing with a stim collar. But I like to break it in or layer it in to the animal in such a way that I reduce the amount of stress. I want the dog to understand. I want to create a signal that goes to the dog so it's a lot more positive when you layer it in. Another thing that I do is I don't just slap it on the dog. There's companies out there that just start doing what they do to use the stim collar, and that's the only way the dog knows how to communicate. I don't believe in that. I don't believe it because the dog, to me, I want to set up a communication baseboard. No, good, and yes. I want to do all my conditioning beforehand, and then I very slowly build the dog up until they're more advanced, and then I introduce the stim collar because I want it to be just an extension. I want it to be a signal. I want it to be a tool that is a three-dimensional tool. Understand this. You have a negative and a positive. That's only 2 dimensions. Right? And I want to have that collar have so much more worth to it when I pay $300 for a collar, and I want the dog to understand it so much more that I can use it in a myriad of different ways. I can charge it, like you hear Justin Rigney talking about. He goes through a whole process where he charges this and makes it a positive response from the animal so they get high on it. Okay? There's a lot that goes into it. I don't want to break it all down now and get into trying to explain this stuff to you, but he wants a go as much as he wants a stop, okay? I don't get into that as heavy, but I could learn it really well, and it's not too hard to do. It's not hard, right? It's understanding it and then applying it to something you want to use it for. Like when you get into Oscar Mora, you'll see Oscar, because he does sport dogs, he'll take his French choke chain, and he'll take that collar and he'll put it on the dog and he'll pump the dog up. Oh, and the dog starts barking real heavy. He's charging that collar to get a lot more drive out of the animal, because French collars, those choke chains that are what's called the French choke, they're huge old link and they don't run as easy as a choke chain does. And they're accepted on the field, when you go out to IGP and a lot of these different sports, they'll allow you to have a collar on the dog unless he's required to be naked, like your ring sport dogs, different thing. And he'll charge it by doing certain things in the behavior that takes the dog's emotional states of mind to a very high level and very drivey level right before they go on the field, right? It's a trick. Right? It's a trick in understanding how to train and condition a dog. So they're charging that collar. Well, again, back to Justin, he has ways of doing things in his patterns and routines of how he layers in the collar and how he starts a dog out with. He will charge that stim collar in such a way that that dog gets high on that, right? And there's all kinds of tricks. There's a myriad of ways of using it. In other words, three-dimensional, because I've got sound, I've got vibration, I've got tones. I've got all kinds of things I can use. I've got stimulation at low. I've got punishment stimulation where I can bring it up to a level that it hurts. I could use it that way, but I don't. My baseboard is going to be one of more positive and more positive way of doing things, so that association from the dog turns that into a signal that creates a very positive thing. And I can charge it as I go along if I want to as well, right? But in a pet dog quality, I usually don't have to. There's all kinds of little things you can do. The first thing we've got to do with it, though, is what you see me doing with Sif. We're going to do what's called the three-way turnoff. Where did I get that? From the Dobbs. One of the first ones. They were doing seminars throughout the country. They have all kinds of articles. They're fading away from the internet. They're getting lost. This stuff is becoming archaic and being lost. If you try to type in the Dobbs and try to find their website now, you may not even be able to find their website. I've got it because I mirrored it. Okay, I will not lose anything. I've got everything I want. If I want to go back and get it, I can get it, right? Because I've mirrored their system. So has a lot of other people, by the way. That their site has been mirrored a lot of times, right? So I have that all available to me. I can go back and get it if I want it. But they wrote hundreds of articles. They worked with IGP. They worked with agility people. They worked with bird dog people. They were all over the country doing these seminars and working with people in applying this tool that we had. But back then, again, it was a little bit more corrective in nature, right? Nowadays, we have a whole myriad of things we can do. My biggest emphasis with what I'm trying to tell you right now, if you watch my videos in regards to what I'm doing with Sif, I've got full videos online that I give to a lot of my customers and educating them how to use this tool. I've done this lecture format with 6 or 8, 10, 15 different videos that I've done in the past. This is a repeat, right? But I want to do a good job to repeat it again. Here it is, new and fresh again. I'm going to go through this. And what we're doing is what's called layering in the collar. We don't do it with anything the dog doesn't already know. The dog already knows all these behaviors. And with today's video that I'm uploading it to YouTube right now, we're talking about the first turnoff. There's going to be 3 or 4 of these turnoffs. One where the dog comes back to me, one where the dog goes away from me. I have a bunch of different ones that are very contextually orientated, so the dog can learn the most from these 3 or 4 turnoffs that I'm going to do. And as we go along, you'll start to understand how I layer in the collar. But this is only the start of the collar and the association from the dog in using the collar with the dog. Right? I want her to have as much positive as possible. I want to give the power to the dog so she learns how to turn off this low stimulus, and I condition the dog properly in such a way that I now have a tool that's a 3-dimensional tool that I can use in a myriad way. I want to expand that as much as I can so that I have as much with that dog as possible. And I do this with every dog when I break in the collar. We call it layering in the collar. Again, we're only using it with things the dog already knew. We never teach anything with a collar. We only reaffirm. It's just an extension of the leash. It ends up being an off-leash tool that I can have my dog out in the field and call my dog back, and boom, if I say with me to Buddy, he runs back. And I don't even have to have a button. He's been so well conditioned. With me, boom, he books it, right? Why? Because he understands the communication that I've given him. Right? But now I have a tool. I can put that on the dog's neck and go out in public and have him anywhere and get him in control that quick and not ruin the dog. I don't have to punish him. He's been conditioned for these responses that I get, right? So you'll have more on there. The first one is the first turn off, and I usually do that with something that I've already conditioned in with the dog. With this dog, I condition in what I call a conditioned heel. And I do that with most of my programs, by the way. I try to make sure we have a conditioned heel, and we can go into that more as long. But it's very individualistic to me. It's something that I do, right? Same thing with me calling it a stim collar. You know why I call it the stim collar? Nobody else uses that terminology. And all that negative thoughts from people that are anti, that sit there and go, oh, that's an e-collar, oh my God. Right away, they're going to close their mind off, and they're not going to learn, they're not going to accept, they're not going to open their mind to learning and growing. I call it a stim collar for a reason. Nobody calls it that, and people do what? What's that? What's a stim collar? It gives me a second. It gives me an area to be able to get in there and communicate with it before they shut their brain off. Preconceived ideas. Right? Preconceived ideas from the public is so prevalent, it's not even funny. And a lot of my job when I'm working with customers is to take away these preconceived ideas from the customer that they may have already been conditioned to feel or think a certain way about a tool or about processes and what we're doing with the animal. I want to take that away so it gives me the opportunity to educate and to teach. Okay? And it's not easy to do. But that's why I call it a stim collar. It's very unusual. Nobody's, whoa, what is that? What does that mean? What's a stim collar? I've never heard that. There you go. Now their mind is open and they're receptive to learning, right? That's what we care about. All right, more to come with our e-collar, layering in the e-collar using the Dobbs method. And like I said, Michael Ellis had a video online, and he kind of overviewed all the different ways of using it. Didn't mention the Dobbs, though. The Dobbs are pretty much retired and out of the picture now. And their site is kind of fallen offline. But like I said, I mirrored it. But that was how I learned, by reading those articles, I've never been to a Dobbs seminar. I didn't get to shake their hand. I wish I would have. They were very, very good at what they did. I could have learned a lot from them, but they did a real good job with their articles too. So I learned an awful lot, and then I applied it, and I learned by doing. Right? That's always the way I've learned. I've learned by doing. I lived in a small town. I didn't have trainers to show me anything. I learned by going out and doing it, right? So, and then I worked in a lot of different trainers and a lot of different facilities and lived in the back of the kennel and learned my craft by doing. Thousands of dogs under my belt. That's how you learn, right? The most important way. You can have it explained to you. You can soak it in the front of your brain and all that, but you're going to learn the most by applying it. But if you go out and hang a shingle out and then you charge a customer a dime, in other words, $1 for doing their service, and then you're learning on their dime, do you think that's fair? No. You need to go work for somebody. Go scoop some shit, learn, grow, put the work in it, and learn from somebody else that already has an established business, and pay your dues, And the kids don't want to do that nowadays, and that's why you always hear me talking about it. I get irritated like a son of a gun because these kids always want to go out and hang a shingle and then learn on your dime. You're paying them to learn, right? It irritates the hell out of me. All right, Mark Ferrasci, Protect Dog Training, yakking at the screen, as usual, about dogs. And right now we're talking about layering in the stim collar, e-collar, electronic collar, shock collar. That's why I don't call them any of those other names. Stim collar. Think about it. I'll talk to you later. Mark Ferrasci, Protect Dog Training, signing off. Have a good day, guys.